Good morning, my beloved community. I'm so happy to see you here. I'm so happy to be here today. So today, as we were saying, we're doing self-care, embracing self-care this month, and today's theme is balancing grief and joy. Ooh, I looked at that topic, I'm like, oh, no wonder Reverend Dr. Mike took the day off. A while ago, when I was younger, I wouldn't know how to even start with this topic. But before we get to this topic, I want to talk about tomorrow is a day that's called Loving Day, and it's the anniversary of June 12th, 1967. 67 was a fine year, I must say. And it was a law that was passed by the Supreme Court that deemed that interracial marriages, laws banning interracial marriages were unconstitutional and illegal. And I just wanted to bring that to our awareness because it's all about love. And as Maya Angelou says, love recognizes no barriers. It jumps hurdles, leaps fences, penetrates walls to arrive at its destination full of hope. And as Andrea was saying, it's all about love, self-love. And we can love whoever we want regardless. And so I just wanted to start my talk today with this awareness that tomorrow is Loving Day, but every day is Loving Day. That's the secret to balancing grief and joy, is knowing that there's love at the bottom, both of these. Whether it's grief or joy, there is love. We're experiencing grief because we've lost a love. We're experiencing joy because we are loving. So I wanted to, this topic, grief, for me, I find it a little bit challenging because it's a work in progress. Going to therapy, working on finding my grief. And when we think about grief, I know the first thing I think about is someone dying, breaking up a relationship. That's my main thought when I think about grief. But grief is so much more than just death or an end of a relationship. We can grieve a change. I'm retiring, and all of a sudden I'm grieving this job that I've had for 25 years. Or my body hurts and I've lost mobility. I can grieve the changes in my body, the aging, the wrinkles. I can grieve that. I can grieve the end of Ted Lasso. I love Ted Lasso. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because I fell in love with these characters. And they were part of my life. So knowing that there's no more Keely and Roy, So being able to tap into that grief and recognizing it and feel it and go through it. I was at a friend's concert the other day, and I got an all-access pass. Wow. I was able to go anywhere on the concert site, on stage, wherever. And I was thinking that I need an all-access pass to my emotions and my grief. That if I had an all-access pass, I would be able to go and find that grief. Because right now, I'm like, oh, I know there's grief somewhere. My body hurts a lot. So I'm grieving something, but I just don't know what it is. But if I put this around my neck and walk around going, okay, grief, what is causing this anxiety? What's causing my upset? Oh, well, it's very easy, Reverend Nicole. All you need to do is go look at that childhood surgeries that you had as a baby and start there. So I just think if we all had an all-access pass to our emotions, but then again, that would take the fun out of it. That would take the fun out of the exploration. That would take the fun out of, wow, what's causing this? That deep, through grief is where we really get to explore that truth within us, what makes us shine. And grief is so personal to each and every one here. We all experience it differently. I remember January 25th, 1998. It was a Monday. My best friend at the time called me to tell me her mother had an aneurysm. She was on life support, and they were about to take her off of life support. And I grabbed my shoes, I got in my car, and I drove as fast as I could to the hospital. And I got to go in and kiss her on the cheek and tell her I loved her. And they took her off of life support. And then we walked out. And I remember she was in CCU, and I remember as the doors, I still have that visual of it, hermetically sealed. I could still hear that of the door shutting. I just remember falling to the floor and experiencing this deep guttural cry, this Jungian, animalistic, painful, sorrowful cry. By the end of that week, I had 3 dear friends die, and by the end of that year, I went to 11 funerals. But I have to tell you something. By the end of that year, I was so joyful and so happy because I realized how impermanent life is. And going through all that grief, I realized how special life is and how I want to live my life. And so as we all go through grief, now when people die, I don't feel as much grief anymore. When my dad passed away, he passed away in such a peaceful, beautiful way that I didn't have that sorrow like I had when my friend's mom died untimely. I was able to complete things with my dad, and it felt peaceful and nice. And then I got to go to Mammoth, go skiing with my friend Brett, and go to the place where my dad's favorite place. And it was this joyful moment. So there was that grief of losing my dad, yet there was that joy of being where he loved. And so we all express our grief differently, and there is no right way. A lot of times I think in our society, men aren't allowed to show emotions. Like, step up for lip. Come on, get over it. Just move on. And we really I need to go to that place and just really tap into that grief to see what it has to teach me. There is a video of Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal when Roger Federer was retiring. And the two of them were sitting on the side of the match, crying, holding hands, celebrating that Roger Federer was retiring and grieving the fact that they wouldn't have that rivalry anymore. And I just remember looking at that going, that would never happen in America. American men, I can imagine John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors holding hands crying over one of them retiring. That's not something I can see. I asked one of my students, I'm like, well, what does grief mean to you? He's like, oh, that's weakness. I can't show weakness. And that kind of seems to be the prevailing thought. So I am giving all men permission to cry if you have to. Psalm 23 reminds us, even though we walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. We have to go through that valley. We have to go through that grief to get to the other side. And as Sir Richard Rohr says, the great wisdom traditions are trying to teach us that grief isn't something to run from. It's a liminal space, a time of transformation. So we get to go to that space and it transforms us. We don't need to hold on to that grief. We can let it flow through us and then release it. I want to thank Reverend Scott Aubrey. He sends emails out. I'm on his email list, and he has these beautiful quotes, so I need to give him credit for these quotes. I love this one. Grief has a very holy purpose. Through our feelings of loss, we actualize true gratitude. When we begin to see the depth of our grief as a reflection of the depth of our love that we felt, the holes that a loved one's spirit once filled go from triggers of sadness and regret to altars of gratitude. The children's book character Winnie the Pooh beautifully illustrates this when he says, "How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard." Whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it is just Ted Lasso, being able to express our emotions and release our grief is a huge component of self-care. So being able to see grief as a road to nurturing ourselves, to taking care of ourselves. And a therapist told me that unresolved grief is brokenheartedness. So if we're not resolving our grief, it's like we're putting up a big wall to our heart. And how are we going to feel this joy if I'm so stuck in this grief? Even Good Willie says, William Shakespeare says, Give sorrow words, the grief that does not speak knits up the wrought heart and bid it breaks. So even William Shakespeare is telling us to speak our words of grief, because our heart, I always think of it like when my heart hurts, it's like a big neon sign that says closed for business. You know, as Andrea was saying, yeah, that rich man, are we going to allow him to come to us? Or do we have that big neon sign that says closed? So for me, I'm trying to figure out grief around my body. I had a bunch of surgeries as a baby, and I deal with chronic pain, and I'm trying to figure out if this chronic pain is from unresolved stuff as a child with the surgeries. Am I grieving being normal and not having quite a normal childhood? Or is it something else that I don't know about? And so I went to the chiropractor the other day, and I go to that one where you just kind of run in and whoever's available, you run out. It's a 2-minute appointment kind of thing. Have you ever guys, it's called The Joint. And I went in last week, and the person who was there, it just didn't gel. It felt very mechanical, and I just didn't have a great experience. And so when I went in Friday, I went to this doctor that I like, Dr. Nick, great name. And I told him, I go, you know what? I didn't have a great experience here last time. And I'm not one to complain. I usually just in, out. I don't express myself. But I felt like I was grieving a little bit over my experience there. And I was telling him about it, and he sat there, and this 2-minute appointment turned into almost a 10, maybe even a 15-minute appointment. And he came up and he hugged me. I was expecting him to come around. He does this little cracky thing behind me, but he came up and he gave me a hug, and he stood there what felt like 10 minutes, but hugging me, and I felt heard. And he was sending love to the places that hurt. And at USM, one of my mentors said, you send love to places that hurt. And I always thought they meant like emotional pain or like broken-hearted pain. But this aha moment, like, no, what hurts? What are you grieving? You send love to those places. It could be a bad back. It could be a knee. It could be mobility, but sending love to the places that hurt. And that's what Andrea was talking about, self-love, sending love. Tomorrow's loving day. Balancing grief and joy is really all about love. By the way, my necklace says, I am love. So it just kind of, so then he did the adjustment for me. It was the best adjustment I've ever had. My body felt heard, my body relaxed, and I released whatever walls that I was building against being seen and heard. So it's something as simple as just being seen and heard, having that sense of love. That's how we can balance some grief and joy. So let's see. So I was looking through my computer the other day for something, and I ran across cultivating radical compassion. And that is something we can do to get through grief. And I have it here, and I'll Xerox anyone who wants a copy of it. But part of our self-care is sending radical compassion to ourselves. And Tara Birch, a skilled psychotherapist and meditation teacher, has developed countless ways to help her students transform their suffering, not only for their own sake, but on behalf of the world. So when you're caught in a difficult emotion, if you're sitting in that grief, trying to figure out how to get to joy, but you don't know how to get there, she has this rain meditation. And if you take a few moments to just take a deep breath for me and let it out. So the R in rain stands for recognize what's happening. What's happening around us? Mentally whisper whatever you're aware of. Is it fear, anger, hurt, shame, grief? What's going on in our consciousness? Then we can allow ourselves to let those feelings be right here without judging it. We're not trying to judge it. We're not trying to fix it. We're not ignoring it. We simply pause and let it be. And you might even whisper, this belongs to. This is something here for me, and it's okay. I am good. The I, investigate. With curiosity, feel into your body, your throat, your chest, your belly. Discover where the emotions are living inside of you. That might be that pain in your back, the pain in your shoulders, the weight of the world, pain in your heart. How many people die from broken hearts, right? We never want to say, oh, it just broke my heart when I heard that. It just might break your heart. I am feeling heartbroken. Where inside of you are you feeling that? And just gently put a hand wherever those feelings are the strongest. Sense what is needed or being asked of me right now. Is it love? Is it forgiveness? Is it acceptance? Is it understanding? And this is the great one. Nurture yourself. And that's what I did by talking to Dr. Nick. I gave myself an opportunity to be nurtured. I made myself vulnerable. I didn't know what he was going to say, but he took it and he nurtured me. Offer care to feelings of vulnerability, hurt, or fear. Let the touch of your hand be tender and send whatever message might be most offering healing. You could imagine this coming from your own awakened heart or from another being, friend, grandparent, spiritual figure, dog, cat, you trust and love. After going through these 4, take a moment in stillness, simply sensing the quality of presence that has unfolded. Notice the shift from when you started, angry, victimized, to the compassionate awareness that's always here. The Dalai Lama says, the way through sadness and grief that comes from the great loss is to use it as a motivation and generate a deeper sense of purpose. And that's what happened. When all those friends died that in 1998, even my business that I worked at for so many years closed. So 1998, there was a lot of loss, a lot of grieving for me. But really at the end of the year, I was happier than I'd ever been. And back then I thought I was nuts, but now I look back and I realize what had happened. Our teaching is so powerful because our minds know that we can wallow in this grief, or we can change our thinking, change our life, lift and shift, knowing that this grief is just a moment. It's just I think about the grief, it's just a moment in our life, and this too shall pass. Abraham Lincoln says, people are just as happy as they make up their minds to be. So it's really up to us. What do I want in my life? What do I want my life to look like? Do I need an all-access pass to my emotions? And you know what? You don't necessarily have to have an all-access pass, but maybe a heart in your bathroom on your mirror to look at it and remind ourselves that we are love. So as we go inside, I'm going to ask Teresa to come up. I want us to take a nice, deep, conscious breath, recognizing that we are divine beings, spiritual beings, having this human experience, experiencing grief, loss, pain, suffering, but knowing it's just a moment and we have our all-access pass to lift and shift and heal this pain, embracing the love, embracing our self-care, nourishing ourselves, knowing that as we balance our grief and joy, we're able to live these radiant, joy-filled lives. And I'm just so grateful for this teaching, grateful for this congregation, grateful for my friends, my families, and all the angels who help me lift and shift and heal anything that's in my life that no longer serves. So I release the limiting beliefs. I release the walls that I've built around my heart. And I just know it is so. And together we say, and so it is.